Welcome, everybody, to the 6th or 7th edition here of the TM Up podcast. I'm joined here, as always, by my co-host, Jared Huff. Jared, eventful week, Thanksgiving, but a lot of NBA basketball to get into. How you feeling, man?
I'm feeling so about this week, mostly because my Chicago Bulls kind of had a rough week, probably the roughest of the season, which we'll probably get into a little bit later. But other than that, I'm not too bad. I probably a few pounds heavier after all the turkey and stuffing and potatoes I had. I don't know about you, but I ate good this week.
No, definitely. So did I. And yeah, a rough week there for the Bulls. As we talked a couple weeks ago, Miami had themselves a rough week. So I think it's going to become, a real trend in the NBA. Obviously there's going to be some down weeks. Nobody's going to win 82 games except for maybe the pace that the Suns are on. They might not lose again for the rest of the season, but we'll get to that as well later. But we wanted to start with something that happened right at the beginning of this week, or basically right after we recorded this podcast. And a lot of people have already had a chance to comment, but we wanted to comment on kind of went down between the Pistons and the Lakers when the Lakers were visiting Detroit. And something happened in that game that has only happened twice in the last 19 years. And that's LeBron James was ejected from a basketball game. And whenever anything happens like that, of course, everyone's going to talk about it. But this kind of happened after a scuffle broke out after LeBron's elbow and kind of wrist caught the eyebrow area of Pistons big man Isaiah Stewart. After Stewart saw the significance of the blood that was coming from the face, he kind of, lost his mind a little bit and began charging at the King. But Jarrett, what do you make of this altercation, man?
Well, first off, I have to say when it comes to the NBA and open wounds, I am always impressed on how much damage just a body part can do to someone's face. Like we see over the years, like I think 1 year Mike Dunleavy got hit across the eyebrow and like blood spilled all over his face. I know Jokic has been hit a few times. Like I'm just always amazed how just a single hand can do so much damage.
Yeah, it reminds you of the mountains that these players are. Like you see them on TV, but then you don't realize like the short guys in the NBA are like 6'3" and 200 and whatever pounds. It's crazy.
Yeah. I have to say, I don't think LeBron intentionally tried to hit Isaiah Stewart, or at least try to injure him in the way he did. Maybe he intended to like kind of shove him off a little bit, which it's kind of funny because you usually don't see LeBron like get like that kind of get that frustrated, especially with younger players and especially in a game where it's like the Pistons, or even though the Lakers were down at that time, it's the Detroit Pistons who have won like 2 games. I do have to say, though, I was very amused while watching this video because I didn't see the game live of how the PA announcers was like, fans remain in your seats.
Yeah.
Like, it's just funny because it's Detroit. Like, even though
they got that flashback, those Vietnam flashbacks, man.
Exactly.
Is exactly what happened.
Like, we're not in the palace at Auburn Hills anymore, but this is the same fan base that was pouring beer on the Indiana Pacers, 17 years ago?
Yeah. Oh man.
So I was really amused by that. But I have to say, kudos to you, NBA. I didn't expect you to suspend LeBron. Because I'm like, LeBron probably deserves to get suspended just because of the altercation and like it was an unnecessary elbow or hand that he threw Isaiah Stewart's way. I expect Isaiah Stewart to actually get suspended more games because he only got suspended 2. But I'm like, Lakers are awful right now. LeBron just came back from an injury. There's no way the NBA is going to suspend him, but they did. It was only 1 game, which I think it didn't need to be any longer than that. But I was impressed by the NBA. Like, wow, kudos to you, NBA. I didn't think you had it in you.
No, I mostly agree with you there. I think Stewart was out of line really for the actions that occurred after the initial kind of elbow that he took. LeBron did catch him with a move that was unwarranted. It was in excess. And obviously the result was blood pouring from his face. And I think even LeBron, separated from it, will sit there and say, I think he deserved to be ejected from that game, which he was. I think that was a completely fair move from what happened. I do not think that it was a dirty play by any means. I did think that the suspension that LeBron got was correct. I think that he should have at least gotten that 1 game to kind of prove, hey, we're not going to tolerate this. I know LeBron didn't mean to do it on purpose, but it was the reaction. It was like a get off me type of move. And, sometimes when you do that, sometimes you hit the guy just in, in the chest, you hit him in the stomach, and it's no big deal. But when you can catch the guy up around the face, up around the eyebrows, it's very easy to split that skin. And like we saw, obviously the blood that was coming from Stewart. But I think Stewart should have gotten a longer suspension, in my opinion. I think everything that occurred after that, where it was 2 or 3 different times of him just bowling over his teammates, his coaches, he was in a fit of rage.
He looked like Derrick Henry.
Oh, it was crazy. They couldn't stop him. And poor Cade Cunningham, he's playing against his childhood idol in LeBron James. He gets a chance to go up against him. He's looking to have a great game. His young squad going up against the guy that he grew up idolizing. And the next thing you know, he has to hold Isaiah Stewart from trying to kill LeBron on the court, because that's what it looked like. But Isaiah Stewart, in my opinion, I would have liked to see maybe a 7-game suspension, have him sit out for a little bit of a week, and just say, like, you know what happened? We're suspending LeBron for the initial act, but everything that occurred after that, I would like to see a longer suspension for Stewart. But I had no problem with them suspending LeBron. I think that was the right call. I like the 1 game. I thought if they went to 2 or 3, that'd be far too much, because you can even see in the video where LeBron initially goes over and he's like, hey, man, I'm sorry. And Stewart, even in the beginning, was okay, and then starts to see the blood and then just sees red after that. But
literally,
no, he was out to harm LeBron at all costs after he saw what was going on.
That would have been an interesting fight. I wonder who would have won it had no one been able to stop them.
Oh, he never would have got to LeBron. I mean, did you see the
no.
lines of Lakers, the Laker players? No. There's no way. DeAndre Jordan, Dwight Howard, Anthony Davis, Russell Westbrook came out there with fists ready to go.
The Duke's up.
Russell Westbrook, no one was going to get to LeBron. I mean, Talon Horton Tucker, they were all tucking LeBron behind. That was not about to happen. And LeBron almost looked confused. He's standing over there by the ref and he's like, you believe what's going on? Like, I'm sorry. I tried to apologize to the guy. And no, but I think the ejection was warranted. I think the move that he did deserved the ejection. I'm okay with the 1-game suspension. I like that they didn't try to push it even further. But in my opinion, I think Isaiah Stewart should have had a little bit longer.
And it's just funny to me, like, this little scuffle, whatever you want to call it, it gave us so many memes that are probably going to be used for the next 6 months. Nothing's better than that post-game Westbrook interview with him finding out he had a technical.
Yeah.
He's like looking at the box score of the game.
He's like, who had a tech?
Me? Who had a tech?
What? I had a tech?
It's like another just classic Westbrook
really?
interview moment.
Oh, man.
And he's like staring at the sheet like he's like, is it going to disappear if I continue to look at it?
I had a tech? I didn't think I had a tech, but I guess I had a tech.
Yeah,
they really should have let him know, because if he didn't know he had a tech and he goes on in that game, gets another tech, and he's ejected, and he's like, "What do you mean? That's my first tech." They should have let him know that.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's one of those instances where the NBA goes back and they can assess technical fouls.
It could have been.
Fact.
I guess the announcers didn't know, so no one really knows when that when it was assessed.
I could be wrong in this, but I think techs can be assessed after games, because I know
you're right.
Like a limit you can have in so much time. So, like I forget how many you get within an extended window or throughout a season where you get suspended after a certain point.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that was the case there. Because I didn't hear or see anything when I was watching just that whole thing play out where he was assessed a technical during the game.
Yeah, definitely. I was glad to see that no one really got hurt. Isaiah Stewart is, fine, just got a little cut on the eyebrow, and during all the rage, no one really got hurt. But that was kind of the events of the early week. And then in the middle of the week, we had something that come out, and everybody around the NBA and around sports absolutely loves when organizations like ESPN, Bleacher Report drop these lists, man. And I already know it. Well, Bleacher Report dropped their 24 players under 24. And I know, Jared, this has really been weighing on you the entire week. So I'm just going to let you get into this. How was this list? How are you feeling about it? You think it was accurate? Just go ahead. The floor is yours. Floor is yours.
You know what? I appreciate Bleacher Report because they have tons of content on sports, especially when it comes to the NBA, and tons of coverage. But I will say, every year, every season, they're due for one doozy. And this may be the doozy of all doozies in any of their lists they've ever done. They're a top 24 under 24 list, which, okay, that's a weird number to choose. Usually it's under 25, but
they also dropped it on the 24th. I think they were trying to make that play.
Oh, I didn't even pay attention to that.
Yeah, it's all right. No one probably noticed but me, so you're good.
This list, essentially, for those who don't know what we're talking about, ranks the top 24 players that are under the 24, or is it 24 under, or is it just under 24? Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Under 24.
Under 24, it ranks the top 24 players in the NBA. I don't know if they're projecting how these players are going to finish their careers, because that'd be the only thing that would make some sort of sense. And yet at the same time, does not make sense. And even if that's what they're going for, because this list, okay, for those that don't have this in front of them, which we should maybe get a graphic up if we do, like, we clip this or something.
Mm-hmm.
Jason Tatum's 8th. Arguably a top 15 guy, which granted the Celtics are not having the greatest season, and he is kind of getting a slow start, but still. Like, they literally are judging these guys' entire careers off of like 10 games.
Yeah.
Jason Tatum's 8th. Do you want to hear who's ahead of him? Evan Mobley, Tyler Hero, Tyrese Maxey, Anthony Edwards, LaMelo Ball, Luka Doncic, and Ja Morant. Now, Luka should be first, but he's not, because I listed them all and going from 8 down.
Mm-hmm.
Ja Morant's in first, which Ja Morant is having a hell of a year this year. But he is not the best guy that's under the age of 24. Luka Doncic is the best player on this list. That's what, like, the Grizzlies they're not even above 500 right now. So what makes Ja Morant a better player than Luka Doncic?
Yeah.
Oh, Evan Mobley has played 18 games. No, I'm sorry, 16 games.
Yeah.
In his entire career. He's only averaging like 13, 5, and 2.5.
Oh,
He's better than Jason Tatum, an all NBA player. 2-3 time All-Star at this point? Are you kidding me? And then Talen Horton-Tucker's 22nd above Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's single-handedly the only reason the Oklahoma City Thunder have any value.
That one was the most egregious one for me. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander
made this
at 23. Shai Gilgeous, no, there's no way. Shai, in my mind, has already cemented himself as he's going to be a future star in this league. He's just stuck in OKC. But every single game that they find themselves in a contest, it is solely on the back of Shai. Like, he is a stud. And to be down there, what did you say, 23? 23. No shot should Shai be that low.
Yeah. Also, they have Trae Young at 9. I mean, his run in the playoffs was really impressive. I think it was a little more like the best possible case scenario for what that team was going to do. Trae Young should definitely be top 5.
Yeah. Right
off the top of my head, it should be Luka, Tatum, Ja Morant, Trae Young, and I'd throw in a 5th guy you could argue Anthony Edwards, you could argue Tyler Hero, you could argue
what about De'Aaron Fox?
De'Aaron Fox, yeah.
He's 13th.
Okay. I mean, also, I didn't, probably because I was so focused on the more egregious stuff, but now looking at this, it's even more egregious. Kevin Huerter is 19th.
Oh yeah.
I don't even think he should be on this list. He's above Mitchell.
He's above Shai.
Mitchell, Shai Gilgeous. I'd even put Horton Tucker over him. Jaren Jackson. A Lakers fan made this list, I think, honestly, because they have Jason Tatum, who's on the Celtics 8th, and Talen Horton Tucker's happy to be here. And
how about Cade Cunningham? I was
just about to say that.
Coming in at 14th, and what does he have? 12 games? 12 games in his
14.
Career? 14 games in his
as
career.
of this as of Sunday night.
So
he's above Cole Anthony, who's balling this season.
And 14 games is enough to get him 14th. For Cade, and I love Cade Cunningham. I think he's going to be a great player. It's just too early. You can't call these things yet. Like, no, there's no chance, man.
It's so bad. And
this one was a rough one.
Tyler Hero, who's balling out too. Like, I don't know if I'd put him that high. I put him above Tyrese Maxey, but then I'm not putting Tyler Hero 5th instead of Maxey.
Yeah.
And especially because, like, we're still trying to figure out, like, who's Tyler Hero going to be as a player? Like, how good is he? Is he really this good? Mm-hmm. Or is he just like just exceeding expectations because he set expectations. Well, he kind of reset expectations
Mhm.
after a disappointing sophomore output. But Bleacher Report, please hire me because you'll never ever have to see a list done like this ever again. I won't let it happen. If I'm whether I'm making the list myself or I'm an editor, because that shit's not getting put out there.
Yeah,
That's not gonna happen.
this was a
So
rough one.
Bleacher Report or a competitor, hire me. Because I promise you that's never gonna happen. Oh, geez. That's all I have to say on the rest of that. If you want to say more, I'm done talking. I'm done
No,
talking
you're
about it. It's
good.
so bad.
Yeah, I'll just
So
sum it
bad.
up a little bit. I mean, the top five, obviously, John Morant, Luca, LaMelo Ball, Anthony Edwards, and Tyrese Maxey. It's also almost some recency bias too with Anthony Edwards, who's played great this year. Don't get me wrong, and Tyrese Maxey, who, in the absence of a lot of their star players over in Philadelphia, especially Joel Embiid, has been playing great and been keeping them in ball games, and he could have a very bright future ahead of him. But Tyrese Maxey, at number five, who outside of Philadelphia and the diehard NBA fans have even heard of Tyrese Maxey? Like I have, because I mean, it's what we're doing here, following basketball. But Tyrese Maxey, I mean, Miles Bridges is a solid player that you can move up a little bit more. Scotty Barnes, I mean, obviously, if we fall back into they've only played 20 games, but these are like some of it's just all over the place. They got Jared Allen in there at 12. Just there's no rhyme or reason to this list. This was definitely up there with the bad ones, and we've seen a lot of the bad ones coming from the bigger sports networks. Oh man, yeah, but we could spend all day on this one. But
Yeah. So speaking of broke things like lists,
that was a perfect transition.
of course,
Perfect.
You like that?
Go ahead. Go
Oh
ahead.
my god. So speaking of broke things, according to reports, Ben Simmons might be making a comeback because he's broke. Ben Simmons reportedly has zero cash flow because he's sitting out of this NBA season so far, not working with the Philadelphia 76ers. And apparently that NBA socialite life is it's getting pretty costly because he's broke. He's got no money. And I was gonna do this earlier, but Jace, what do you think about this? While I look up what his career earnings are to see just how broke he really is.
And go for it. Yeah, this is sad to me for a few reasons. And number one, it's because he obviously hasn't been managing his money well enough to be able to withstand the lifestyle that he wants to live in the NBA and in his private life, along with the fines that he's been subject to. But and then number two, it's sad because he didn't prepare himself for the absolute mountain of fines he knew that was going to be coming down his road. Like, this is the path that he chose. He knew coming into the league privately that he was not going to be playing basketball. He was not going to be showing up to practice. He was not going to be reporting to team meetings, team games. This is what he knew. And he signed a contract to play basketball for the Philadelphia 76ers. And if he's not going to fulfill his end of the contract, they're going to find him. He's dug himself this hole, and for seemingly nothing other than his ego can't handle the fact that they tried to trade him. So what? GMs try to trade players all the time, like especially Morey. He tries to trade everybody. Like, if you want to help yourself, play basketball, raise your trade value, stop the fines, and collect a game check. Like, that's the way to do it. Like, it's simple. Come play basketball, show that you're the top talent that a lot of people around this league have been believing that I have completely sold all my stock of.
Yeah. So apparently, and this is only through NBA contracts, Ben Simmons has made $57 million as an NBA player, strictly just for playing basketball. That does include endorsements, which I see him on TV, or at least I used to see him on TV pretty often with like Gatorade, I believe Nike and stuff like that. So, yeah, there's no reason he should be broke. It's just, it's so disappointing because I felt like coming into the league, we had another potential player to be like another LeBron type. And not only has he squandered his cash flow, he's squandering his potential on being great. But I don't think he cares about being great. I think he just cares about what being an NBA player can give him rather than like just the game and his obligation to his team and stuff like that. So it's just, I feel like there's always something in the news that comes back to circling around to talking about Ben Simmons. And this one is probably the most comical, but it's just a reminder just how disappointing this guy's career is turning out to be.
Yeah, we knew in the beginning when that first podcast we talked about Ben Simmons, and I think we said we will be revisiting this because we knew it wasn't the end of the story. We knew one way or another he was either going to come back and play. Obviously, I'm sure this isn't the reason why he would see himself come back and play, but if it's going to force him back into a uniform, it's going to be interesting to see if Doc Rivers is even going to put him on the court if he comes back. You know what I mean? Like he could come back and just sit the bench. And then he's even filling his obligation. It's such a messy situation. And I am so glad that I'm not that involved in the 76ers or trying to go through the management, Daryl Morey, Doc Rivers, or just a player on that team. Because you want to talk about being a distraction. Like remember when we were talking about how a couple years ago, Carmelo, the report came out that he didn't want to come off the bench. And everybody's like, oh, he's a distraction. You know, we need Carmelo out of the league. You know, that generation's done. You want to talk about a distraction? Like this is off the charts.
This
like
is
you
paramount.
Like these guys, he should have someone that could reach out to him and maybe get through to him. But I think they would have done it by now, and obviously he doesn't have anyone. It's just sad, man. It's a sad situation.
Ben Simmons, if you need a coffee for tomorrow morning, send me your Venmo. I'll send you $5. And then when you make it back, all I ask is you don't forget about me.
Just
all right?
Return the favor, man.
Don't forget about me.
Yeah. Oh my. And now this is a new one. I want to move on to almost the exact opposite of the Ben Simmons situation that's been kind of coming up here during this week, and that's over in Houston. And with the forgotten about John Wall, who a lot of people thought might not be on a roster. Oh, he is. He's on the Houston Rockets roster. And it's been a strange story developing. And he's been telling the media and team officials that he wants to play, that he feels healthy and he wants to play. Then no word has seemed to come from the organization about when and if he'll be taking the court. But it seems like he's been traveling with the team, just sitting in street clothes while he's been healthy and on the roster. It's been a very strange situation. So, Jared, I was just kind of, wondering, what do you think of this situation that seems to be the exact opposite of Ben Simmons? He wants to play.
Well, there's a few things that really just doesn't make sense to me about this situation. The first and foremost being it's a tanking move, which the NBA has a real strong stance against tanking. I don't understand how, which given John Wall is not the all-star player he was anymore, but you put any player on that court, he's the best player on that roster. So I don't know how this team is getting away with not playing a former NBA star that wants to play basketball, whether it's in Houston or elsewhere. He wants to be on a court. He sat for the better part of 2 seasons and played a little bit last year when he was healthier, when the Rockets would play him, but now they're not. And I don't understand how this situation's allowed to happen. Like, buy the guy out or trade him or something. I think it should be illegal what they're doing. He's healthy. He wants to play. He should be playing. And it's not because he can't play, but because the team's refusing to play him. I mean, you're going to tell me you could maybe argue Christian Wood, maybe, but I still think John Wall is a better player than him. You're going to tell me that there's most rotations are 9 to 10 men. You're going to tell me that there's 9 players on the Houston Rockets. The 2 in however many losses, probably because it's going to be like two wins for a while. You're going to tell me on that 2-win team that there's 9 guys better than John Wall to where he doesn't crack the rotation? This shouldn't be happening. We don't see stuff like this until this modern era. I don't know how the Thunder got away with sitting Al Horford, who was healthy for the rest of the season. I don't know how they got away with that last year because it's an obvious tanking move. I don't care if you're trying to say, oh, we're trying to play our young players. Well, you should be trying to play all your players. It's ridiculous to me. It's ridiculous. And cut John Wall loose. If you have to cough up the whatever's left on his contract where he's making $44 million a year, just do it. The man wants to play. Send him to Philadelphia. I know he's been linked to there before, and Philadelphia needs a point guard apparently.
Yeah. No, this is a weird one because a lot of the times when, like you mentioned, we'll see some guys that'll just sit out the rest of the season, but they usually come to an agreement between the player and the organization where hey, we're going to shut you down. It's best for you. It's best for us. But this isn't that. I mean, John Wall, he wants to go out there and prove that he's got something left in the tank. He's really kind of fell from the league's graces over the last 5 years, but Now it's almost like a punishment to be stuck in Houston with all these young guys, which, if anything, him being on the court with these young guys will help. I mean, if there's one thing, if you don't think John Wall can play basketball anymore, that's one thing, which I think you're wrong at. But also just the veteran leadership that, he's been around the block. He knows what it's like to be a young star in this league. He knows what it's like to come in with high expectations. That leadership around, guys like Christian Wood and Jalen Green, that's valuable. Like, why would you not want him around your team? And he wants a chance to go out there, prove that he has something in there, chance to get freed, maybe traded, but he wants a chance to go to, one of these organizations that has a shot at the playoffs. He still wants to chase a title. He wants a chance to go out there and prove that he has something left to give, almost kind of like the Derrick Rose, where, he went out there that everybody was kind of like, what does Derrick Rose have left? And he turned himself into 6-man of the year candidate. Like, he's one of those guys where, yes, he's not what he used to be. He's had a lot of injuries, and he at one time was a very explosive player. We don't know if he has that explosiveness anymore, but John Wall can contribute to a lot of teams around the league. And I'm sure they take him in this kind of, even if it's a backup point guard or even like a backup shooting guard role, there's teams out there that are going to be in the playoffs with young rosters that they say, hey, we could find space for him. Like, this is ridiculous. And I think the Rockets, I agree with you. They're not gaining anything from not playing them besides just taking minutes away from young players, but there's plenty of minutes to go around. Like, he's not going to go out there and just say Jalen Green is all of a sudden going to go from playing 32 minutes to playing, 22. That's not how it works. Like, they work him into the rotation. There is space for John Wall in this league, and I think it'll be interesting to see what comes of this.
Yeah, and the Rockets don't have to hold on to him. Obviously, that's not what I'm saying. Oh, you have to play him the whole season. Like, no, play him, but try to move him. Yeah. Because, I mean, I've seen clips of him in practice, practicing with the Rockets players. I've seen clips of him on the bench at games in street clothes. But it's like, just like these young players that are suffering through a devastating season where they're just losing games left and right. They could use a guy like that on the court, a guy that's seen success in the NBA to some extent, a guy that can show them on the court in a real game situation how to handle yourself, how to conduct yourself. Because John Wall is used to the bright lights. He's used to the highs and the lows of the NBA. That's the problem with this league. I think that's the problem where we're getting young players like Ben Simmons and stuff like that, which is how they handle themselves and how they carry themselves. If you look at the NBA top to bottom, many of these rosters don't have guys over 30. And if they do, it's one guy. And the veteran presence in the NBA, it's gone away. Because either the Lakers and the Nets stack them on one team, and then you look at all these other teams, and their oldest guy is 29, but that 29-year-old has been in the league 5 years because he was playing 2 years in Turkey and hasn't done anything productive in terms of a playoff resume or anything like that. This team does not have veterans beyond Eric Gordon and John Wall. And young teams like this, young teams like those 76ers a couple years ago when the whole process was going, they could have used these veterans. And they didn't have them. And it shows. It shows as these players grow up and mature.
No, definitely. And you threw out one team that he could be linked to in Philadelphia. And I want to throw out another team that it'll never happen, but I'd be interested. And it's a younger team that finds themselves in the playoff hunt. What about Washington? What about the return of John Wall? He knows the organization. He knows a lot of the players that are still on that roster. All of a sudden, they look at themselves and see them. They're right there in the middle of this tough Eastern Conference. Got off to a hot start. What about the return of John Wall?
The only way that happens is if he gets bought out, because Washington was happy to get rid of that $44 million contract.
Exactly.
Honestly, it'd be kind of like a better Cam Newton-esque return because he's only been away from the team for about a season. So. Yeah. I mean, I could see it. That wouldn't be bad. He would provide scoring and some excitement off the bench. Why not?
Exactly. Just going to throw that out there. And then also going to transition now to a team that doesn't look like they need to add anybody, as the Suns have really kind of just taken a stranglehold on the East or on the Western Conference besides the Warriors. Just they've won Saturday, which marked their 16th straight victory They won 113 to 107 over Brooklyn. And Jarrett, man, like, how have they kept this streak going for so long? 16 games.
Well, it's clear that this team really knows each other. I mean, obviously that trip through the playoffs and how most of this roster returned from being in the finals last season. I think that's really helped because this team knows each other really well. I mean, Chris Paul has a whole year under his belt with this roster, which really helps. But I mean, Chris Paul fits in really anywhere. So it's not really a chance or a thing of like teams or Chris Paul getting acclimated, but just the entire team in general. I mean, this was a young team for a long time, and they've found savvy veterans. And I still think Chris Paul is a superstar level player.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't get to the finals without superstars, and Chris Paul was the main reason why that team got there. So this roster has been built well, it's been maintained. And I was kind of harping on them last week. I'm like, all right, yeah, this like, I think it was what, 10, 11 games at the time when we recorded.
Yeah, 9 or
last and
10.
talked about
Yeah,
it.
right around there.
And I'm like, okay, it's impressive, but they're beating sub 500 teams and stuff like that. Well, that Nets victory, that's a real victory. I mean, they held James Harden to only 12 points. They let KD put up 39, but hey, if you're holding James Harden to 12 and letting KD get 39 and getting the win, that is a good game. You contain the Nets. Congratulations.
Yeah.
But I will say, I'm not too confident that this win streak can continue. And let me tell you why. They face the Warriors twice next week. In fact, as early as if you're listening to this on Monday, they're facing them tomorrow.
Yeah. Those are going to be tough games.
Yeah. So they face the Warriors, the Pistons, and then the Warriors again. You got the Spurs and you got the Celtics. And then after that, you got the Clippers just going down their schedule. It's not going to be easy.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll be impressed if they can keep the streak going even one more game.
Yeah, they're really putting the league on notice, and what they're really kind of just saying to me is that last year's run was not a fluke. They pretty much, I like to compare them to kind of like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers over in football, where they just brought everybody back. They pretty much just brought back the entire roster, a couple changes here and there, but nothing real major. All of their key contributors are back. Jay Crowder, Chris Paul, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton. I think they still have Saric, if I'm not mistaken. He's back from injury, or I don't even know if he is back from injury yet at this point, but it's paying off.
He's not yet.
He's not. So the do have reinforcements coming, but it's paying dividends. Like you said, they know each other. At this point, they all know how to play with each other. They're a deep, fairly young team that has a good mix of leadership in the locker room. And to me, the biggest key to them is they're hungry, man. They got a taste of the finals last year. Pretty much everyone on that roster, besides Jay Crowder the year before with Miami, had never been to the NBA Finals before. I mean, especially the key guys in Chris Paul and Devin Booker, never been to the NBA Finals. They went there, they lost to the Bucks in a series that they feel they should have won. They got out to a good lead, and Giannis just went Superman mode and just came back and willed them to a championship. But they have it in them to make another run, and they're really showing early on that, right up there with the Warriors, they are the two teams in the West as of right now, no doubt about it.
I also have to say one last thing on this. Shout out to JaVale McGee. You are the king of free agency because you keep finding a way to get back onto these top Western Conference teams. I don't know how you do it. You were there for the Lakers and Warriors championship runs, and then now you find yourself yourself on the defending Western Conference champions in the midst of a 16 run, replacing Dario Saric. So good for you, JaVale. Good for you.
So whoever his next team is, you could bet on them to at least make the conference finals in the next year. That'd be a good bet. But yeah, now it's got to move on to our final segment here on the Tee 'em Up podcast, and that is our favorite one, and that is Tee 'em Up. So Jarrett, who are you gonna tee up this week, man?
All right. Well, it was a tough week for the Bulls. Some of their play wasn't great. They lost to some cupcake teams. They shouldn't have lost to the Pacers as bad as they did, and they definitely shouldn't have lost to the Rockets. And even in the wins they did have, it wasn't easy, except for the Magic game. I was not worried about that. We blew them out by like 30. But that Knicks game was rough to watch. And I'm going to tell you why. I'm teeing up the refs of all the Chicago Bulls games this week. The most egregious part of it was, I think the Bulls were down 5 in the Rockets game, which again, we should not have been down by anything. We should have been up by 40. But that's neither here or there. Lonzo Ball in the corner hits a 3 and he falls down. The other player didn't touch him. He didn't touch the other player. He fell. He fell because I think he was trying to avoid like just getting hit by the other player, and they called an offensive foul saying he touched I don't know what Rockets player it was, and that took away the basket. And that killed the Bulls' momentum to potentially come back and win the game, which we should not have been in that situation. But regardless, the refs got in the way of the game, calling the worst offensive foul I've ever seen in my life. Even the announcers on all sides were like, okay, like, what was that? That's just a bad call. And it ruined the game. We don't go to these games. We don't turn on the TV to watch the refs. We watch the players decide these games. We don't watch the refs decide these games. Also, that Knicks game, if you look at the box score and you look at the numbers of just like free throw shooting, oh, it was so bad. The Knicks had, I think, almost double the amount of free throw attempts that the Bulls had. And it was crazy. I honestly, I was shocked the Bulls won that game. I was shocked because the refs did everything they could to make sure like the Knicks won. Like, I don't know if this whole NBA conspiracy still stands where the NBA is just trying to help the Knicks when they try to give them Patrick Ewing in the 85 draft, if that's a real conspiracy or not. I don't know. All I'm saying is they made it really hard for the Bulls to pull out that one. And I'm just technical foul on the refs. Jesus.
Man, I was just waiting to see if you were going to blame the refs for that loss to Miami, but I'm glad to see you didn't really go there, as that was a hard-fought game on both sides.
That was a good game.
That was a great game. Miami came out on top, but
no,
I'm sure
it was only a good game. It would have been a great game if Chicago came out on top.
All right, but the next time around, it could just as easily go the other way. But it was nice to see two of the heavy hitters in the Eastern Conference finally go up against each other. You know,
I'm glad it was a close series. That gives me hope for the rest of the season, and it'd be a fun playoff matchup.
Oh, it'd be an insane playoff match. But yeah, man, I got to tee up someone who I have not been a real big fan of. Man, I got to tee up James Harden of the Brooklyn Nets. And it might not be for the reason that you would expect. It's not because of his play, which surprisingly, you know, little by little, he's starting to inch back up there in his numbers and starting to play a little bit better.
I guess the Suns.
Well, yeah. But the Nets are playing, you know, good basketball. But for me, it's the comments that he made yesterday following the loss to the Suns. Let me just read you this quote. He said, quote, "I'm trying to figure out when to score, when to be a playmaker, when to do a little bit of everything. It's been difficult. James, you're a former MVP. You should not have to be told when to score the basketball. You have led this league in assists. You have led this league in scoring. You have been the odds-on favorite. The people have called you the best player in the league, even though I've never believed it. You should not have to be directed how to play basketball. You are James Harden. I don't know how to do that, which is why I'm not getting paid millions of dollars to do that. James, just be you. Why is he overthinking this? I don't know when I have to score. I don't know when I have to play make. Just go ball. And not to mention, you have Kevin freaking Durant on the same court as you. Pass the ball to him, have him make shots, and score your buckets. You're James Harden, man. Tee him up. Like, I'm done with this James Harden. At first, it was excuses. Now it's, I need to be directed. I need to be told. No, forget that, man. Go play basketball. No, I'm done with James Harden. I'm done.
You know how that reads to me?
Let's go.
It reads to me like that was like a text that you kind of, or a conversation you have within the earshot of the person you're trying to hear. That text was meant to be sent to Kevin Durant, because James Harden's kind of sounding like the kind of passive aggressive girlfriend or boyfriend in the situation where Kevin Durant's the clear star of this team. He's going to be the guy to get the ball in the final seconds. He's going to be carrying the main offensive load, which James Harden, ever since he left OKC, that's been his job.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Seeing kind of friction where he's come back with other alphas, like when him and Russell Westbrook and played together, and Westbrook was taking which Harden in that situation should have had the balls, but Westbrook would be taking all the shots.
Him and Chris Paul.
Just be a mess. But James, buddy, you're not Houston Rockets James Harden anymore. You're coming into seasons out of shape because it looked like you've been ordering Domino's pizzas every night. We're not sponsored by them.
Too much time at the club, man. Too much time at the club.
Exactly. Like we get your jerseys hung up in the rafters there. Doesn't mean you got to go there every other night. Like
It's already been retired. Your
what,
legacy is cemented there, man. Don't even worry about it.
like I don't know what this guy is expecting. Like, okay, obviously you went on a great run with the Nets last year when Kevin Durant was out, but when this guy comes back, he's going to be the focal point of the offense. He's going to be the guy everyone else should defer to. You, Kyrie Irving, Blake Griffin, whoever, LaMarcus Aldridge, he's going to be the guy that gets you there. You just have to find a way to help him. And these passive aggressive comments in the media, it's only going to, like, you sound like the unhappiest player on the best team in the Eastern Conference.
They're
and
in
I think
first place in the Eastern Conference.
You've never won anything in your career. And this guy can help you do that and show you how to do it.
Easily.
Just get him the ball. You'll get your spots when you get your spots. Just stay open. Don't take plays off. I've seen you in games. You're just sitting. Oh, geez, I'm frustrated. You know what?
Yeah.
Double tech.
Tee him up, man. That's what I'm saying.
Let's do it.
Tee him up, man.
I'm with you. I'm on the bandwagon.
Oh, that's all we have this week, guys. Thank you all for joining us here on the Tee 'em Up podcast. Be sure to check us out on all of our social medias on @TeeEmUp. We'll be back next week with another episode as we continue to break down the crazy NBA season. Make sure to check us out and see who we tee up next. Thanks for joining, guys.
Make sure to share us with all your family and friends.